This is a pleasant room with the windows.
Yeah.
Well, yesterday they just got.
Renee. Nathan, I think. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
There, how about this?
Yes.
All right. We're running a little behind here, so wait, maybe another minute. When Jennifer, welcome. Hi, AJ.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hello.
Nathan, are you teaching an institute right now?
Yes, I am. We finish tomorrow.
Oh, lovely. Which one are you doing?
Animal science through Stephen F. Austin. So get to work with Candace.
Oh, Candace. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, mine's not until July.
Oh. Yeah, timing wasn't real good for this one.
Yeah, exactly. Jen Crane, I think, is teaching one too right now. You're muted.
Yeah, no, we're doing it together. So we're both.
Oh, you are together. Oh, okay.
All right, so I think we'll just go ahead and get started. I'm Lindsay, and we have some people in the room here in 7 on Zoom, which is awesome. Who has done the Agriscience Fair before? A few. Okay, so just and a few people. Can you guys hear me? I got a question on there. Okay. There's a few people that haven't done it yet. And I would say that the first thing, there's 2 components. There's a written report and a presentation that includes some sort of visual display, a poster. And on the conference website, I did share last night a document. Hopefully you'll be able to find it with some links to some online resources. And then the divisions and categories. And so for Agriscience Fair, there's a lot of opportunities for your students to be successful because there's not a lot of competition within those. I think yesterday it was 36 different divisions, categories combined. So the way it works is that for each, my notes here, categories: animal systems, environmental, food, plant, power, and social system or sciences. And then within each of those categories, there's grade levels. So like middle school essentially by themselves. And then middle school, you can have like 2 students participating in a project together. And then 9th grade and 10th grader together, 11th and 12th together as an individual and then a pair. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of opportunities for students to feel success in the Agriscience Fair to kind of get the ball rolling. This year there was Dr. Warner. There were
only 2 divisions where I had to separate persons. I think there were a lot spread out, and there were some divisions that didn't have anybody division and categories together.
So if they're, where do they go? They go to national.
So they submit their written report to nationals. So at the state level this year, and what typically happens is that students will complete a written report. There's a template on the National FFA website, a written report template for the different age levels. And you submit that first, that's scored at the state level. And at the state, we do a presentation, and it's 25% written report, 75% presentation at the state level. And then if you have a winner, you have to submit the written report. We just had to do that this last week. That gets sent on to nationals. Nationals is reviewing it in July. And then if they're in the top 12 to 15 selected, they would then get to the opportunity to present at nationals. So just because they're a state winner doesn't mean they get to go and present at nationals. So depending on the category and division and how many applications from across the nation are submitted, it just kind of depends on where it falls that year.
So
That
those
makes sense.
numbers, even during a normal year, is not that.
And I feel like bag power mechanical systems is always a little bit lower than some of the others, but if you look back on the results, you can kind of see where it's really competitive in the different categories and divisions.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Okay, so you just roll an SAE project into this and make this basically the format for doing it.
This is an SAE project. Yes, I do that with a lot of my students. We don't have a lot of traditional farm kids, and we're trying to build it from our freshmen up. So I'm at a new school, and so we just told the freshmen it's required. And if you look at the science and engineering practices, like being able to ask a question and design like an investigation, that's huge, like part of those standards. And so this can meet those. It's an SAE project. It gets them involved in FFA, and you can do it as a part of your class instruction. So I feel like it covers all of those. Does anybody else have anything to add as far as people who've done this before? Benefits in the class.
I came to school, we had lots of kids. We only had 25 kids into the competition for Agriscience. And our state winners only about half the national. Because your application has to be dead on when you take the national. So you gotta actually review that. I'd have multiple people going over it, looking at it. There's also a few tricks for if you do take you guys have used PowerPoint, great presentation before. We did our posters on PowerPoint, printed it off, and that way we could Velcro it to the displays, and then we could roll it up, and it's easy to transport to nationals that way. But yeah, when you're competing, that was the frustrating thing, is I had a bunch of kids that qualified at one state, and then only one of my three, because we had 6 advisors on our program. Well, last year we did, and 3 of my kids made it, but the state didn't make the competition. It was just actually my 8th grader just made it, which that kind of all sorts. I don't know if the state has restrictions on kids traveling like at certain ages. We had all this red tape to go through to take 8th graders to nationals.
I don't think so.
So that's like if they make sure those applications are thoroughly vetted for you, because honestly that's all those people are doing is there's I don't know who the committee is, they just look at that application and they put it through based on what your report says.
And Dr. Warner yesterday pointed out a really great resource on ffa.org in the Agriscience section. There's resources, it's called report components. There's videos for each section of the report to help you understand what needs to go there.
And I'm
So-
gonna get a link directly to that from the Washington Agriscience page, so I talked to Jason yesterday, so we'll get that. Washington page.
Can I ask a question? Does it feel like, I'm not trying to be negative, but does it feel like, as the kids are doing, does it feel like they're jumping through hoops, or is it really off that?
It's authentic. I think the way that I start, kids have a hard time doing, like asking questions and like coming up with a project idea. So that's what I was hoping we could start like thinking about within our teaching spaces at school or in your area. Like, what are some problems that maybe you face? And then have the kids ask questions like, how could we solve this? And then coming up with things on their own. One example, when I was in Walla Walla, our sheep were wasting a lot of hay. They would just pick through and eat all the leafy stuff. And so they're like, well, how can we reduce the waste? And so they wanted to do a research project on chopping the hay. They actually did a mechanical system and looked at the different types of chopping methods to reduce the size of the stem part. And so it was relevant to what they were doing. They were interested and they went with it. My most recent one this year, the student was wondering about how masks impact the environment. I wanted to know which ones are better, the single use or the cloth ones. Like, well, we can't really answer that question right now. And so we just started a Google Doc shared between us and asking different questions back and forth until she came up with what her social science, it was a survey. She wanted to know perceptions. What do people think? Do people know what they're made of? Like, how do you know? Like, different questions like that. And she did the majority of it on her own, and she did a pretty good job once she got the topic figured out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know, I'm asking a lot of questions.
No, this is good.
How long does it take to fill out the application or the paperwork that goes on with it?
It can take a long time. It's a process for sure. I think if you spend a lot of time helping kids develop their ideas and questions, then it goes pretty smooth. And so dedicating a couple of days to just like, how do you identify problems and what kind of questions can actually be researched?
Are you talking about the final report, or are you talking about application for?
Kind of a little bit of everything. Like,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time on SAE projects, okay?
Uh-huh.
So I think there's probably a better way to do it than I'm doing. So I'm looking at this, like switching over to something else. I've seen, heard this a couple times. I'm really interested, like legitimately, but just trying to plan and how to, anytime you implement something new from what you've done forever, it's scary, right? So,
Yeah.
but I've seen it at the national level. It's pretty cool what they're doing. Those boards are impressive.
If you're using AET, it's a lot easier because kids can be tracking all their stuff along the way.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they submit their science application that way. I don't know if our state does it. This is my first year trying to push here in the States.
And I would recommend if you're like implementing it, all of your students across the board, have each section, like have them write an introduction and then
Like each day.
well, yeah, or like this week is introduction week and, you know, because they're going to collect data over a long period of time that the arts, they can be working on while they're collecting data or before they collect the data. And so that'll help, you don't have 5-page reports to grade all at once. And you're giving them feedback along the way that might make them rethink about how they're going to, what
A few years ago, I tried this for the first time, and I did it with a little class. And Jessica Elia from Sumner, who does this every year, she gave me some really great resources for how she does it as a whole class, and like makes it a semester project. And I could send it to you what she gave me too. But what I did was, and I just did it that one year because then that class I had switched, so that I haven't done it in a few years. But I did the whole class had to do it in partners. And then the top kids got to go compete, and it was at throughout fair. So it was kind of like a competition, and they loved it. So then those top kids are the only ones we made display boards from. And again, she gave me a website that you can use to like plug in, and they make the display board for you. You put everything in the template, and then you order it, and then it just comes in the mail. I still have them in my room from that semester we did it, but that was a great resource she gave me too, because it's like, I don't know, like it has such a great template. Every kid made the template in the whole class, but then I only ordered the ones that won the competition and got to compete in Puyallup. And it was really fun, like, it's not kids that normally do have to pay. And we paid the dues, we made it the whole thing, and like, let's all go to Puyallup for the day. And so that was awesome. And the fact that they can do it in partners, I think is really encouraging too.
And postersession.com is I think the one that they
Yeah.
shared. I put a link in the folder for the resource for this workshop. So it's on there. Oh, sorry.
Sure. Are you talking about what Jessica gave me, for the semester project?
Yeah, it comes up a lot as like, go talk to Jessica, and like, I'm sure it'd be easier for her.
Yeah, she's done this a lot, and they are very successful.
And
Yeah,
she was coordinating the contest.
Yeah. I went to college with her too, so I'm just like, hey, send me the stuff.
So Tammy, there was a question in the chat. It says, can you help explain the process for deciding who the top kids are within the class to go and compete?
I did it, for me, I did it based on like the grade I gave them. Like they all presented in class and had their templates all done. And then I graded them and everyone who got above a certain percentage got to go. Now, that was very easy because it was like a wide range in that class. So I already knew going into it, I'm not gonna have all these kids to get above this percentage, but maybe you might have to do it a different way depending on the type of class you have. I've been really thinking about adding this in next year because our animal and plant biotech case class finally switched to a year long. So that's the other hard part is like the competition is in March. So if you have a semester class, you don't have a lot of time with those kids. So now that it's a year long, I feel like, oh, we could craft this and actually do something really competitive. The class I used before was a year long, so we were able to do it. But I think that's another thing to keep in mind if you want to do it as part of the class.
When do you present this, or when do you, like, when's the event?
Dr.
Yeah,
Wynn.
so, oh, you're a good person, perfect time.
Good time.
Yeah, when do you have Agriscience scheduled into your schedule for next year? We talked about it a little at the review yesterday, looking at early April.
Mhm.
But we also have to be careful because of spring breaks in there. So
It's still gonna be in Pullman.
it will be.
I mean, that's still another selling point. Like, what is up to tell? Sure, it's kind of fun, but like, Pullman's fun. Sure, yeah.
Now, if it's, what are the deadlines in the states for
Oh,
when
yes, sir.
applications are due?
So what we talked about the other day for a review is that they would register about a month and a half out with just the name, the division, and like a sentence, 3 sentences about their project. So I can help start lining up the judges that are needed. And then 2 weeks before the contest is when they would hand in their completed written report.
So we're thinking like mid-March is when,
The-
no, sorry. So mid.
Yeah, mid-March for reports, probably.
I have currently, going off of 2019, February 15th is when registration would open for agronomy, nursery, landscape, floriculture, Agriscience Fair. That due date for registration would be March 11th, and the event is held TBD in March.
So you have from the 15th to March 11th to get the applications in. That you're saying for.
You have from February 15th to March 11th, yeah, for registration, doing, I guess, what you were just talking about, like condensed kind of description.
Yeah.
And then when's the final?
So the final report would be two weeks before the contest date. So we just, yeah, so Jason and I'll sit down and we'll look at some spring break schedules too, to make sure, because that's hard for you guys to bring kids when they're. But while I have you all here, if those of you coming from the west side, is it better to have it on a Monday or a Friday? Does that make it easier for you to bring kids, or doesn't really matter?
I don't know.
If it's a Monday, you travel, I try to travel Sunday. And then I don't usually have as much school.
Sometimes it's more of a pull with kids.
You miss school though.
Yeah.
So like when you travel on Thursday, you keep Friday.
I kind of like the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday idea. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm a drive-in Thursday guy, do the Friday competition, go home on Saturday, and then you can have, if you want to bust home early, and you gotta be home by noon, you can roll out early. If you don't really care about your Saturday, you can roll out 9 or 10 and go home. That would kind of be me, but.
Where do the competitions depend on competition? Well, it depends on how many reviews there are. What I'm trying to do is have a set of judges for each division, for each category. But like this year, I merged some categories together because it was 1 or 2 in that whole category. So what didn't make sense to take a judge time.
So what is the format look? Because, so there's do you use the national rubric? So it's the whole report get reviewed for the national rubric first?
So
the whole,
the report will get reviewed ahead of time by a separate judging group, and then there will be interview judges. To be very honest, I was scheduled to host it for the first time then we got shut down by COVID. This year we did it in the virtual model. First year we just created written reports. This year we did a virtual. So I have not hosted it all the time yet. So that's my.
And so, and the kids can, they get interviewed at their poster.
And then the other thing we've talked about, and Jason and I talked about, is providing an outlet at state convention that they could showcase their projects with the other students, maybe even in Beasley area when they're like lining up for session and stuff, because they have a captive audience, just to get some excitement. Yeah. And
Yeah, because that's usually the hardest thing, like, a kid do something that's visible, what am I actually doing?
Is there not enough room at state, like, why, I'm guessing, I'm trying to wrap my head around why you've done separate from state convention?
And I think,
That was my
Yes.
question is,
Yeah.
we talked about it too.
so
Can
I
we
think
host
I
it
was
at
told
convention?
originally that it was hard to schedule it in space and time and conflicts with other contests. So I'm open to looking at that as long as I can do ag ed and agri-science and not have myself spread too thin, because ag ed will be at the state convention. So I'm open to that option. I do think judging wise, like, because some of our people who I would probably pull for judges are helping with other contests too at state convention, so that makes.
I don't know, travel wise, like the fact that it's in Pullman for state, and if we had it in March, it's like for us west side people, that would be a big pull. I feel like we could get more people involved if it's like, you get to go to state convention.
Just to back you up on that. Oh, it would definitely, I mean, if you're looking for recruitment and add numbers, man, all of a sudden you're gonna be able to take way more people.
In my Dutch school that like won't approve very many expenses, will actually be like, oh, this is all one trip. Yeah, sure you can do
And
that.
I would sell
rather
state
than-
convention easier to my administration. My administration, my superintendent's really heavy in the sciences right now. That's where he's putting a lot of his ducks. So it's easier for me to bid there. I'm taking 8 kids to state convention to present science projects. He'll dump the money into sending kids to that before, because he's always done, he's like, well, I don't know if I want a pound cow operation, and I'm like, well, that's half of what we do is cows and troughs and stuff.
Okay, Agriscience Fair is one of my favorites. That was my first 3 years teaching. That's how I got to go to national convention. I had students that did Agriscience Fair in places of the state and was able to go. Just give some history. North Carolina had their Agriscience Fair at convention. It was kind of outside the ballrooms, had tables were set up, students' displays were up there. Judges came through at some part during the day and judged their interviews and their presentations. And then they stayed up for the entire convention. People could go around and see. They weren't always there at the poster, but the poster stayed up the entire time for convention for people to go and see. So I'm in favor of convention all the news. So finding rooms and locations, we just added to the list to find locations for. So.
Did you say it could be done with the ag ed? Is that you?
Well, no, so I have to go on ag ed at state convention too, so for me, we just have to make sure we can spread it out enough that, because I'll have 2 days for ag ed.
Maybe we look at getting me like an assistant coordinator that can facilitate Agriscience Fair. You do the pre-stuff leading up to it, and just day of, they facilitate that.
So do the kids that have like, when they're being interviewed?
Mhm.
So you would-
And the judges were like sets of 3 judges, and they had assigned students that they would go and interview. And so all 3 judges didn't come up at one time and interview that student. They walked around and judged.
Yeah, we had 3
Intermixed.
3 judges. The kids had 3 different scores that got averaged when the judges came through. My kids just, there was really like a 2-hour time slot. Say this 2-hour time slot, you have to be by your board in 2 hours.
Mhm.
And so, and then I was off limits as an advisor. When my kids were being judged, I couldn't be anywhere near them or.
Yep.
What state did you come from?
Utah.
So then it could be like potentially for 2 hours, all the kids are all purpose, people can walk by too?
Not during the judging.
Okay, so then the judges walk around, and so at state, we would just have to make sure the kids are there for that 2 hours. But then if they had conflicts with like a different contest, you know, I guess that's nice to make it work.
And if they had free time and they wanted to go stand in case
Yeah.
people were walking around, they want to talk about the project, I mean, they could, yeah.
I'm all
It's
for
fun
it.
watching it all. We have, in Utah, we have hundreds of kids that compete. It was cool to just see all the different ideas. And it did, every year it seemed like it got more and more competitive.
Mhm.
To me, Beasley makes a lot of sense, because you can take it when there's not much going on, but then
Behind
all
the
those
stage.
people walking by to go into convention are gonna say, what's all this stuff out here? Oh, these are cool.
Yeah, she talked about that, how,
Yeah.
have it outward.
You can leave it out for a day or two, you know, and then, but you know, only judge it during an afternoon.
So it's time to go to the next session. So if you still have questions, feel free to ask or email. We do have a folder on our conference website. We could maybe, like put a Google Doc on there and you could put questions and we can maybe help answer each other's questions and support each other on there. Okay.
So does this mean it's happening at state convention? Like.
I'm for it.
Okay, so, all right.
Like I said, planning convention in person is gonna be all new to me, so we'll just add it to the list.
I'll put it in the chat. Is that?
I know. Yep. By calls, this is about putting it out.
I'm gonna put my email in the chat,
That's usually the
and then
landmark.
if you send me an email, I will share some more information at this point.
That's where, actually, that's where I was just thinking about grandpa lives.
Oh,
I
yeah.
grew up in Florida, and they used to spend all my winter or Christmas was always up in that area.
Yep, the Appalachian, yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Now, school wise, my biggest challenge here, I came from a huge